All right, welcome to another episode of the Why Influence podcast. Today we got another amazing guest. Her name is Tori Dunlap, and she has a brand called Her First 100K, and it's been growing like crazy. It's doing a lot of positive impact kind of stuff. I'm just honored to have you here as a guest on the show today.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm stoked to be here.
Sure. What I'm gonna do here is just share my screen real quick to sort of poke around your stuff a little bit. So I pulled up your TikTok, 850,000 followers and 5.8 million likes on TikTok.
Yeah, crazy.
That is
That's
crazy.
largely just in about 6 months, which is even more wild. Um, yeah, TikTok, we can talk about it, but that's just next level growth. So just
Okay.
crazy.
All right. Well, congrats on on that. We'll talk
Thanks.
about that in a little bit. Then I also pulled up. You've got a Facebook group with about 15,000 members for a personal finance advice for women, the 100K Club. And I was looking down here, and it said you got like 600 in the last week. So it's definitely seems like it's a good growth curve that's happening there.
Yeah, and they have really just beautifully intimate, vulnerable conversations, which, you know, I'm always focused on how do we get people into the Her First 100K community who, want to be here and who are excited about learning. It's less about numbers. And this group especially, it's not, a huge amount of people, but the
Right.
conversations that people have are just absolutely, yeah, vulnerable and beautiful. And it's, yeah, one of my favorite places where our community lives online.
Yeah, that's great to hear. Yeah, the vulnerability, the authenticity, the it's not about the numbers, it's about the deeper connections, and
Right.
it sounds like a great group. We'll talk about that too. And I pulled up your Instagram. I know you're on all the other social platforms, but you got 117,000 followers there. That's pretty amazing. And
Yeah.
you're consistently sharing there. And I've read some of your comments, and it's just great to see the kind of support and the kind of feedback that people are giving from what you're sharing.
Yeah, Instagram was always the platform where I spent the most time. And actually, I just got verified 2 days ago. So that's
Oh,
a
congrats.
recent,
Oh, yeah, I see that.
exciting blue check mark. Took a long time to get there. And it's funny. Yeah, again, we can talk about this too. But, over at Facebook, they just kind of flip a switch. And they're like, great, you're verified now, but it takes forever to actually get it. So, yeah, that was a fun win.
Nice. Cool. Well, do you mind just sharing, in your own words, in a couple sentences, what her first 100K, the brand, and what it's all about?
Yeah. So her first 100K is a global money and career platform for women. So I view financial education as a form of protest. I don't think we have any sort of equality for marginalized groups until we have financial equality. And so her first 100K was the business I started as a side hustle about 4 years ago and then took full time in late 2019. So I work as a speaker and an educator teaching women how to pay off debt, how to save money, how to invest, how to negotiate, how to start online businesses. And yeah, we're a community of over a million now, million
Wow.
financial feminists fighting the patriarchy through financial education. It's my favorite thing to do. So, yeah.
Nice. Yeah, it's a very needed thing, and I just want to say thank you for making the impact that you're doing.
Sure.
That's
I think it's very needed to, it's the whole reason I started the business was I was the friend all of my friends were coming to for advice and guidance. And I realized especially that if you are a member of a marginalized group, you don't get the financial education that other people do. Like it's not taught in schools. It's, unless your parents sat you down and had a conversation about money, which is what my parents did, that's just you're going to miss out on that conversation, or you're going to miss out on that education. And so yeah, we're at a severe disadvantage as women when it comes to bettering our financial lives, and unfortunately, it's part of the equality equation as well. It's keeping us behind in terms of gender equality, pay equality, racial equality. All of these things, right, are linked back to how much financial foundation. What is your financial foundation? How much financial power do you have in your own life? So yeah, that's why I started HFK.
nice. Well, before we get into the how-to or to your story, I like to ask, you're definitely making a lot of positive impacts on people, and you're probably hearing a lot of stories and success stories from the people you've impacted. So, is there a specific story that you wouldn't mind sharing of someone that's reached out to you and just said, "Hey, you've had this kind of impact on me," and maybe something you didn't expect, like an unintended consequence?
Yeah, I mean, one of the crazy things that's happened. I've gotten used to saying every day I get messages from women, but at this point we get messages every hour, which is really, really amazing. I mean, I have stories from, helping a woman get $60,000 more in a salary negotiation to, women who have enough in the bank to finally leave abusive partners, to just women feeling more confident and having more agency just in their general lives because they feel more confident about their money. So yeah, there's these specific stories, but it's really, I get feedback from women all the time, which is my favorite part of what I do. And it's just absolutely amazing. And like we're starting to hire more people now. And we just opened up an application last week, and just the amount of people who applied, amount of women who applied, and we're just so excited. They were just like, I want to be a part of this. And for me, like, this is my baby. This is what I've built. And it's so cool to be able to think that like somebody else could care about this as much as I do.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, so
Yeah.
you definitely, so you probably didn't think like when you started this, like, hey, I'm going to be building a community where the people in the community are going to be the people that will be coming on board and helping me as an employee that can help
Well,
drive this.
you hope, right? You hope you build
Yeah,
something that people are so into that happens. And now what I've realized, right, is, the more that I have grown my business, the more that I, have grown my own personal wealth and my financial foundation, the more I can hire on women, right? And 70 some odd women applied, and we actually had to shut the application down early. And I'm reading through these applications and I'm like, I want to hire every single one of these women. Like, that's the new goal. Like, I want to grow a business to a point where I can hire every single person who applies, because why not?
yeah, that's amazing. Very cool.
It's been really cool.
So, what would you consider your primary platform is? Like, just so I can gauge my questions based on that. But what would you consider?
Sure. I mean, TikTok in terms of numbers, right? So we have that outnumbers every platform, almost 10-1. But Instagram has been where the majority of my time and effort has actually gone. TikTok's growth was explosive and, something that I'm still navigating. But I've only been there, 6-8 months. I've been on Instagram for 3.5 years, like posting daily for 3.5 years. So those are probably the two primary platforms, but Instagram's definitely where the majority of our time and effort has gone as a team.
Okay. So based on that, you can answer on either platform, whatever comes to you.
Sure. And I know TikTok's probably more fascinating to people because it is very new. And I've kind of cracked the code on it, so I can answer whatever questions you're wanting to ask.
Yeah. So I want to do something more entry level first. And
Sure.
So let's say you meet someone that wants to start a new, TikTok or a new Instagram, starting either without anything yet, or maybe they just started and have been just starting to post. What would be some of your biggest advice to this person, like, starting out?
Yeah, my number one kind of business mantra is serve before you sell. And when you're showing up on social platforms, I think it's really easy when you first get started to think like, okay, I need to sell products or, build a brand, and that's what will bring people to my social media, right? By getting customers, they will then follow me on social media. And it's actually the opposite, right? You don't build a brand or build products in order to grow your social following. You need to grow your social following first in order to sell to them, right? So you constantly talking about your products, constantly talking about your services, that's not going to get it's not going to grow your audience. It's not going to get yourself followers. So when you're thinking, especially in the early days, you want to constantly be checking yourself and thinking, how can I provide value above all else? How can I educate somebody? How can I make their life easier? Again, how can I serve before I sell them? Because when you're first starting out, you're not looking to sell products. That's not your goal on social media. You're not looking to sell products. You're not looking to sell services. Your goal is to build trust and credibility. And my background is in marketing. So I worked for almost 5 years in social media, in content before running my business full time. So what I, saw both in building my own thing and helping other people build their businesses is that you really have to start first building trust, building credibility, building rapport with somebody, because they're not going to sell from you, or they're not going to buy from you, unless they have that trust and credibility, right? And it's also going to feel really icky for you. If you're like right off the bat trying to sell something to somebody, it's not going to feel good. It's going to feel inauthentic, and people can see that. People can see that from a mile away. So really focus on serving before you sell. building trust and credibility and starting to build your audience from there.
Awesome. Yeah. So, if you don't mind me diving a little bit deeper there, do you have any
Sure.
tips for like, activities or, approaches of how you can self-explore and how you can build that trust, build the credibility, or serve better and stronger sooner to your audience? Is there anything that you feel like you did well navigating that
Yeah.
space in the early days, or that you've seen others?
It was a lot of education, right? And I still do that. One in three posts for us is only like strictly education, strictly value based, even today. So we're really focused on, as a team, even with an audience of 1 million, continuing to show up and serve. So maybe it's a reel or a post about the 5 questions to ask in a job interview, right? Or exactly the biggest mistake somebody's making when they try to start investing and how to avoid that. So coming up with ideas for content, you can either, start to explore where your audience is spending time online, and find questions there. When you get to, even if it's a couple hundred people, start asking them what they want to see. Every product I've ever built actually is based off of somebody's question. And it's usually based off of, a couple hundred people questions where they come to me and they're like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm trying to get out of debt. And I hear that, 200 times in a day. And I'm like, okay, we need a debt payoff product, right? Or we need more education around debt payoff. So ask your audience what you want to, or what they want to see. And if you haven't built a customer persona yet, I highly recommend it. I mean, it's kind of elementary to explain it, but I will. Customer persona is, who is your ideal customer? What's their name? What's their age? Where do they live? What are their interests? What are their likes? What are their dislikes? What are their values? How many children do they have? What's their income, right? And, mine is Jennifer. She's 27. She lives in New York and she makes about $70,000 a year. And, she's liberal leaning and loves going out to eat and loves traveling and doesn't really like, bullshit judgmental financial advice. And so I always have that kind of persona in my mind when I'm building products, building content, because, if it doesn't line up with that, that's not my audience. I'm not going to either go somewhere where my audience isn't, or create content that's not going to be useful for them.
Yeah, great advice. Thank you for sharing that. I think the customer persona is hugely important, and it's also something that can change over time.
Totally.
Yeah, so it's good to revisit it if you haven't looked at it in a while.
Yeah, totally.
Awesome. So let's go a little bit higher level here. Let's do TikTok, since that's something that's more recent that you've
Yeah.
got a lot of traction on. What's something that you're doing on TikTok that you feel like maybe a peer or someone that's even higher level than you on the platform is doing? What's some of your secret sauce? Like, what do you feel like you're doing that's different, that's attributing to some of your success there on the platform?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've kind of realized about TikTok, I was on TikTok as a consumer for about 6 months before I ever published my own TikTok. So I was on, it wasn't even, I don't think market research, it wasn't even that intentional. I was just there because TikTok was fun. And what I realized is, what trends were happening, what sort of content did well. And what I've realized about TikTok, a lot of social media is this, it's a performance, but TikTok especially, if you can show up with like aspirational content, you will probably do well. The classic, like, I started my business on the side and was working long hours and like, boom, look at the success of it. That's a great TikTok. It performs very, very well. And that might not perform as well on another platform. So my highest performing TikTok, the one that kind of changed the game for me, it was a viral video. It was over, as of us recording, it's gotten like 3.7 million views. I was getting 100 followers every 5 seconds.
Wow.
It was crazy. And it was literally just me talking about like how miserable I was working corporate and how not miserable I am now being able to work for myself. And yeah, the actual filming of that TikTok probably took 10 minutes, 7 minutes, and then just blew up. And so I'm trying to make sure that my content is both aspirational and educational, right? The aspirational can help bring people in. The education content is what gets people to stay, right? Because that's the value add.
Right.
So yeah, in terms of TikTok, I think Instagram, there's some of this too, right? This aspirational content, but I think on TikTok, it does really, really well. And if you are trying to figure out, do I want to start on TikTok? Is that something that I want to pursue? think to yourself, like, how do I tell a good story? That's all marketing. That's all social media. But on TikTok, especially, you get less than 60 seconds to grab somebody's attention, to tell a good story and figure out what that story is for you.
Yeah, awesome. That's great advice. Do you mind just going a little bit deeper? Because you've brought this part up a lot with that difference between the aspirational content and the educational content.
Sure. You're wondering like how that looks different. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, like maybe an example of each to help our listeners.
Yeah, so like an educational piece of content or like an educational TikTok would be like the 3 things to look for in a credit card, right? Or exactly what a Roth IRA is and how to open one. Aspirational content would be like, for me, here's everything that my business accomplished last year. Boom, 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 boom. Photo of me in a photo shoot, like our video of me in a photo shoot. Or, the video that went viral was, I call it the clown shit video because that's the audio under it. But it was just basically like, me pointing to myself. I had this really, really nerdy photo of my first job out of school and me at my desk, and me pointing current me and just being like, that's clown shit. And then showing like receipts of, me on Forbes, me on Good Morning America, my profit and loss statement from last year. And so that's the aspirational content for me that's done well, mixed with the actionable personal finance education that, is impactful or most impactful for people. So if you're thinking like top of funnel and working down, right, I'm doing more aspirational content to get people in the funnel. I'm building their trust. I'm building credibility with them. I'm, again, demonstrating value and giving them value so that they'll continue down the funnel and continue to stick around.
Nice. Yeah. Thanks for explaining that. That's really helpful. And it's a great idea because it gives you, that you're so relatable immediately because of all the aspirational things that you're sharing. And then,
I'm also showing credibility immediately, right? Yeah. So I'm like, here's what I've done and I'm really proud of it. And also I've been on these publications, like, I have trust, I have credibility, I have rapport in the personal finance community. So somebody's going to see that and be like, oh, either I want that, right? Or I trust this person to tell me what I should want, right? Those are the kind of 2 pieces of that pie.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for the advice. But I'd like to transfer over now to a little bit on your story. So, where would you say like the beginning was for when you started sharing in a larger way, like when you started sharing in a way that's bigger than like just like your in-person relationships, when you started to sort of step up and start making a bigger impact? Like, where's the beginning of that for you?
Yeah. So I started my business in late 2016. I graduated college in 2016 and kind of came to adulthood and womanhood in a very different America than I expected. And so graduated college in May of 2016. Trump got elected in November, obviously, and just realized, I was like, oh, this is not the country I thought it was. This is also learning more about this equality piece. It became apparent to me that like I wanted to have more conversations about gender and about, bettering, especially young women's lay of the land in their workplace of, feeling confident, getting, going after jobs that they wanted, negotiating their salaries, that sort of thing. So I started my blog, which was called Victory Media, in December of 2016. And it actually took me 2 years to discover that I just wanted to talk about money. Because what happened was I was blogging, I had my Instagram, I had my Twitter. One, I wasn't seeing a ton of growth. I remember getting to like 4,000 Instagram followers and I was stuck at 4,000 for like 6 months. Like I couldn't crack the code. But more than that, I realized that all of the content I was producing had something to do with money, even if it didn't seem like it. So I'd talk about like traveling and going to Costa Rica with my best friend. But half the post was how about I found a flight deal and I negotiated my rental car and here's how we saved money. And so when I became more financially educated myself, and again, when I was the friend all of my friends were coming to for advice, I realized, oh, there's a huge gap in the market in terms of personal finance guidance for women that is viewed as a form of protest or viewed as an actionable way to, build your agency in life and build your influence. And so I rebranded to Her First 100K in 2019. And that was kind of the switch flip. The whole reason Her First 100K, the brand name came to be was I was on a journey to save $100,000 at 25. And that was kind of the inspiration behind her first 100K. So not only did I launch the brand, I publicly stated that goal and like kept myself to it. And that was one of those moments, right, where, I mean, my dad called me. My dad was like, so what happens if you don't hit the goal? Like you've announced it very publicly. What happens if it doesn't happen? And for me, like typically when I set goals, I'm like, we will make it happen no matter what. But it was also, you know, I was like, even if I get to 70 or 80K, like this community isn't going to leave. People are still going to be excited for me and supportive. And if I've built the community that I want, that is the narrative, right? It's like, even if you're under the goal, the fact that you set it, the fact that you work towards it is enough. So I ended up hitting it, which I was really proud of in September. Thank you. The joke was, as long as I did it the day before I turned 26, it still counted. So I hit it at 25 years and 3 months. So had a blockbuster year in 2019, was featured on Market Watch and CNBC multiple times and a bunch of other platforms and publications. Hit my goal, announced it in September, went on a 10-day Italian road trip with my best friend, got the call for Good Morning America in a pub, went on Good Morning America, and then 2 weeks after I quit my corporate job. So things just kind of all shifted in 2019 when I got really clear on who my customer was and really clear about what I was talking to them about, which was personal finance and money, again, as this form of protest. And, you know, the brand Victory Media, obviously my name, my full name's Victoria. It was a riff on that, but you didn't know what I did, right? It was too broad. It was too general. It's a great name for my LLC, but it's not a good name for like the front facing brand. It doesn't really make sense. So I was really, when I switched to specifically talking about money, you know, very clear in my brand name, what I did and what I was about, and who it was for, right? It's not your like fifth 100K. It's not your first million. It's your first 100K, right? It's for people who are just getting started. And for women who are, or women identify people who are just getting started. That's when everything shifted for me.
Awesome. Oh, congratulations, by the way, for hitting the goal and for getting to the point where you could quit your job.
It's kind of crazy because it feels like yesterday. It was also so long ago. Like so much has happened since then too.
Yeah, I bet. So just for my clarity, the rebrand, when did that happen? And that was that before you set was that when you set your goal to hit the 100K?
Rebrand actually, funny enough, happened today 2 years ago. It was February 18th, 2 years ago. So 2019. Okay.
And you had set your goal at the same time as that rebrand, or was the rebrand after quitting the job? Sorry, I missed.
Yeah, no, you're good. I had set my 100K goal before privately. I just hadn't announced it to people. Like I think my parents knew, my best friend knew, like probably the guy I was dating at the time knew. And then in 2019 was the first time I was like, okay, I'm rebranding my business. I'm announcing this goal publicly, and it was still a side hustle. I quit my job in November of 2019. So I went through almost a year of trying to manage this growing business with a 9-to-5, which was super challenging and honestly kind of sucked, but super worth it.
All right. So you started out blogging, and then you figured out that the blogging led to you constantly were talking about money. So then it put you down that path. Then you went through a rebrand, set a goal to hit the 100K. Then you hit the 100K, then you got into all these publications, you got on Good Morning America, and then you quit your job, and now you're full-time in this.
Yep. I could have explained it. It took 10 minutes to explain it, and you explained it in about 20 seconds. So.
Well, I didn't have any context with it.
No, but I got you. Thank you.
Yeah,
it's much more succinct than mine was.
Well, I'm trying to gauge the story so I can drill into it a little bit.
Sure.
So you did the blogging, which you helped you narrow your narrative and figure out like what your why is, like where the topic is, the niche, things like that. So when you were going on these shows, were you nervous, like getting on stages at these places? Like how were you feeling when you were getting into these like stages and being able to share?
So fun fact, I am a theater major. I majored in organizational communication, which was like marketing with less math. So I have a BS in org com and a BA in theater. I did not study finance. I technically didn't even study business. Which shocks a lot of people until you get to know me for 2 seconds. And then you're like, oh, she's a theater major. But that's, I think one of my pieces of secret sauce as an entrepreneur is, yeah, of course you get nerves when you're about to do something, especially as public as Good Morning America. But, I was more excited than nervous. I'm used to it. I'm equipped to speak in front of people. That's something I'm really good at. There's plenty of other things I'm not good at, but that's one thing that, for me, theater drilled into me very young. So yeah, it felt very comfortable, and it continues to feel comfortable, which is nice.
Okay. So why did you start the blogs? Like, why did you start writing? How did this, like, it obviously evolved into what it is today, but why did you start? Like, what was the purpose for doing that?
The personal purpose was, I realized 2 weeks into my first corporate job that I hated it. I was like, this is not for me. I can't do this. Like, I graduated college thinking, okay, I want to be VP of marketing by 30. Like, that's my goal, is to like work my way up the corporate ladder. And then working a job, and again, it sounds so ridiculous, but like, you get into a job as a new adult, and you're like, oh, I have to like ask and apply to go on vacation. Like, I have to submit a time off request, and I only get like 8 days off a year. And like, I have to work for, and again, not all companies are like this, but my first job out of school was an amazing first job. I learned a lot. It was also a very male dominated, pretty misogynistic environment, where I was the youngest manager by at least a decade. So there was that aspect of it. It was just, I became very disillusioned very quickly. And so it was the personal element was like, okay, I hope to build something that I can eventually, it's profitable enough that I can quit my job. So that was the kind of selfish personal reason. The second one is that, I just felt like there was not enough people talking about how to navigate your career, how to, talk about what it later became, how to talk about money. As someone who had just graduated college, as a woman in their 20s and trying to figure that out. So it was a mix of both. It was, me trying to build my own saving grace, my own exit, while also understanding that, I had this interest that corporate was not providing, or I had this idea for a community that I was not going to be able to get working in a corporate job.
Yeah. All right. So, why was it so important to you that like nobody was talking about it? You set your goal for hitting the 100K by, what was it, 25?
25. Mm-hmm.
By 25. And, but like, pull that aside, like, why was it so important that nobody was talking about it and that you had to start talking about it? Like, why was that so important to you?
Yeah, well, again, like I said, I was the friend that was talking about money. I was the resource that, my friend would come to me and be like, what is a Roth IRA? I've been hearing about this. No one's explaining it to me in a way that I understand. And I realized that I could kind of translate these financial topics into things that made sense for people. So these typically like very, ivory tower, confusing concepts, I could kind of translate into what I call like millennial English, right? And it was also, the more I learned about the inequality, the financial inequality between men and women, between, Black people and white people, and between, in the LGBTQ community, and if you're differently abled, right? There's all of these things that impact our money. And there's a lot more people talking about it now, but especially back in 2016, I don't think we were having a lot of those conversations.
Right.
We were talking about wealth inequality, right? Of, Occupy Wall Street, right? All of these movements had happened, but the nuance around, the realization that like, okay, 78 cents to a man's dollar for a woman in terms of the wage gap, even worse if you're a woman of color. But we're not talking about like the investing gap. So women either wait longer to invest compared to men or don't invest at all. And then women live 7 years longer than men do. Mm-hmm. So you're taking less money, it's growing at a slower rate, and then you're expected to live longer on that money. And again, once you hear that stat, for me, it was just so obvious. I'm like, I can't not talk about this. I can't not do something about it. And then when you start to realize too, that any sort of financial foundation, we're not talking millions of dollars. We're just talking like an emergency fund, means that a woman can leave a toxic situation that she doesn't want to be in anymore, whether that is a job or, a relationship. I was able to actually, I took a job that ended up being really toxic. I was only there for 3 months, quit without another one lined up. And I could do that because I had an emergency fund. And that was also another.
Did the exact same thing. 3 months.
There you go.
Savings. Yeah.
Yeah. It was a confirmation to me personally of like, oh, this is the manifestation of why this work is so important. And I know plenty of people, plenty of women who don't have that flexibility because they don't have anything in savings. And that's not really their fault. They haven't been told how to do this, right? Or they don't have the resources. So you can, leave toxic situations. You can donate to causes you believe in. You can start businesses. You can buy a house. You can have children or not have children. You can retire early, right? You have all of these opportunities that open up when you feel financially confident and when you have a financial foundation to go off of. And again, the more I learned, the more I started talking to women, the more I started hearing experiences of, I would love to do this, but I don't have the money. Or, I would love to start a business, but I don't have the resources to do that, or I don't have the money to do that. The more you hear those stories, the more you realize, the inequality problem is tied to wealth inequality, to financial education. And if I can be there as someone who can impact that space, well, I'm going to do it.
Yeah. That's really powerful. The whole purpose of this podcast is called Why Influence. And you said like, you can't not talk about it. Like that's how powerful your why was in the beginning of getting started. Like it was an obligation.
And if you would have asked me 5 years ago, I make this joke all the time, but if you would have asked me 5 years ago, like, whoa, what do you think you're going to be doing? It wasn't this. Like, I did not think I was going to be talking about money for a living. Like, did not think that at all. And now, the more I dived into it, the more fascinated I became. And the more I realized that a lot of the financial information out there, especially the really popular stuff, is kind of bullshit. Like, I have a very kind of public crusade against Dave Ramsey, but I like the narrative around like, you're not rich because you buy too many lattes. Not only is that just like not true, it's very shaming, it's very judgmental, and it's very misogynistic. And that's the kind of narrative, that doesn't acknowledge systemic oppression, the math doesn't even work. And it's just like, if this is the narrative around personal finance, no one's going to want to save money. No one's going to feel motivated to actually do that. So if I can not only frame personal finance as beneficial for you, but beneficial for a larger society, that connects with women in a different way. We are, again, this is a generalization, but typically, women have that very empathetic gene, right? Of like, we will sacrifice everything for somebody else before we'll take care of ourselves. So if I can brand personal finance as not only beneficial for you as an individual woman, but as, again, this larger form of protest is you bettering society, you're going to get more on board psychologically. So that was the other thing I realized too, is like, if I can frame this as your best shot at bettering your life, the lives of your family, generations, right? Building generational wealth and also having an impact on your community, that's going to make this more compelling.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. I'm curious because, you seem so perfectly fit for the path that you've taken. And, I know
that's
there's
kind.
a lot of,
thank you.
I know there's like a bunch of struggles that you've encountered through the path. So I'm curious if there's any moments during your journey that you had to give yourself permission, to step up in a certain way, or give yourself permission to think a certain way. Curious if you'd be willing to share maybe something related to that.
I love this question. So we can talk about social media all day long as being this amazing community builder, and 98% of the time it is. That 2 to 5%, when it's not, is a really rough 2 to 5%. So me going viral on TikTok and me blowing up also came in November with death threats and hundreds of thousands of hate comments from individuals with a lot of internalized misogyny who did not like that I was not only openly and transparently discussing money, but that I was demanding more money, getting paid what I'm worth. And that video that happened in November was me talking about a brand deal that I was offered that was very low, especially for the size of the brand. And I got a lot of vitriol for it. And I know that if a man had made a similar video, it just would not have hit the same. And so I had to kind of go dark for about a week and a half. I had to make sure that my address was nowhere online. I had to really just protect myself, protect my team, not only just from a business perspective, but emotionally. I didn't necessarily take it personally, but it was really scary. And it was really, it felt like an avalanche. It just like kept coming and kept coming. So social media is a beautiful place, and it's something that I've built my business on. It also is really really damaging. And if you are a woman and you're watching this, you know, being a woman online is really, really scary. And for me, I'm not only a woman online, I'm talking about this very male dominated taboo subject that a lot of people don't like that I talk about so openly. So
Right.
That's been a struggle. It's figuring out, how do I protect myself? How do I set boundaries? I don't have my DMs on Instagram open anymore. My DMs on Instagram are closed. They've been closed for, I think, almost 6 months now, which of course limits the interactions I can have with my community that are good, but also, you know, is a way of protecting ourselves or protecting our brand. I have no hesitation in blocking people anymore. I had to kind of get over that hump of feeling like, I don't know, what are they going to do? And I still feel like that sometimes. Like, what if they go on a crusade against me for blocking them? And I'm like, nope, we're going to block them. They're,
Yeah.
you know, they're not allowed in this community. If you're going to say something to me that you wouldn't say to my face, you're not allowed in this community. This community is not for you. And so I've gotten really happily aggressive with the block button. And just, learning how to protect my energy and protect how I show up online. Because I have given so much of myself to the community, so much of myself to the brand, that in doing so, I also, around that time in October, November, both due to personal and professional stuff, because this has been a really hard period of time, I think, for everybody, I burned out. Like, I was really tired. I was emotionally exhausted. It was really hard for me to show up both for myself and my business because I had been doing it so consistently for so long. So in 2021, we're really focused as a team on creating more healthy boundaries, you know, working quietly, finding projects that we can do that aren't so public, and as well handing a lot of these tasks off to my team where they have a degree of separation from it. If, you know, we get a hate comment, I don't necessarily have to see it. They can take ownership of that and handle that for me, and kind of protect me from that, be a shield. But that's something that I wish people talked about more, is like, yes, part of my life is, even better than I imagined in terms of like my happiness being a business owner. There is some glamour to it, although not really during COVID. I'm coming at you with like no makeup and no bra. This is it. But there is, in talking about my business and talking about, our success and our growth, it seems really amazing. There's also a lot of things that you don't realize, not only in running a business, but running a very public online business, where people feel what's the word I'm looking for? Not responsible for you. They kind of feel like they own you in a way. They feel like they get to dictate how you look or how you show up. And again, something I wish people talk about more. There's a downside to being so public.
Yeah. Oh, I appreciate you sharing that. Helps the listeners hear that. So that's great.
Yeah.
So I'm curious if you're willing to share, I'm curious what your team looks like, or
Sure.
the vision of where your team is, sort of infrastructure is going to build the ecosystem that you're doing.
The joke for me has always been, I want to be Tony Robbins, but less icky. So that's the plan, is I want to be able to, write multiple books, to do speaking tours, to, having this community of people who are really excited about what we're doing and what we're building. So that's the long-term vision. Right now, actually all of my team members are still students, which I've done on purpose. Literally all of them are part-time contractors. And I think some of them graduate later this year, and we're planning on bringing them on full-time. But yeah, that's part of something that I've been really proud of, is actually, like, as I've grown, being able to have women grow with me. And from a business side, I always joke with them, I get to kind of mold them how I want them, which is nice too. So like, I get to teach them exactly, how I want them to show up, and best practices for certain things. And they get to bring a really fresh perspective to HFK, which is phenomenal. We are very much a collaborative team. Like, I run this business, yes, but like, they run it just as much as I do. We have a very open relationship, where we talk all the time about, what do we want this business to look like? Where are we taking it? And I'm really proud that, I can not only give these women jobs and pay and be able to, have them be part of this really exciting thing that's growing, but also, get them at just the start of their careers, and whether they grow with me or eventually, go off and do either their own thing or work for somebody else. Like, I'm really honored to have been part of their journey. So yeah, that was a really intentional choice on my part, is bringing people on pretty much as soon as I could, so I could hand tasks off and delegate, while also making sure that, yeah, these were people who were super subscribed to what we were doing and the broader mission, and were ready to just, kind of dig in and run with it. It's been pretty crazy in terms of growth. We joke all the time. This time last year, we had about 30,000 followers. Now we're at 1 million.
Wow.
So it was less than a year in terms of just, crazy amount of growth, crazy amount of workload happening, being put onto us. And we're all just collaborating and along for the ride with each other.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, I think it's a great concept to get the students, and then you can mold them the way you want as they come out.
Which sounds like crazy, but like there's a better way to say it, I'm sure. But no, I just really love, and they're really great women. Like, they're really, really smart and really, really talented and really hardworking, and also some of my best friends. And so that's been so cool to see their growth, and also have them see mine, and be able to have this really transparent, collaborative, thing where they're bringing ideas to the table all the time. They can tell me I'm wrong all the time. Like, it's a really cool thing I think we're building.
Yeah, I agree. So, people are always asking, like, how do you make money, like, online
Sure.
or in the influencer space? So, like, however granular you're comfortable being, or high level, do you mind sharing, like, the sources of income, or just like a little bit of that ecosystem and how that looks?
And if you're interested, I actually have a TikTok where I talk exactly about my passive income streams and literally show receipts. Like, I literally show screenshots.
Okay, I'll have to find. Maybe if you can send that, or if I'll find it.
I will send that. Yeah, it was one of the most popular TikToks, and it was something that I knew, and I was posting. I was like, okay, this will probably do well.
All right, I'll put it in the description for the show then.
Okay, cool. So I have about 8 sources of revenue. I can run through a couple. Courses is a big one. So I have a couple different courses around negotiating your salary, starting a side hustle, back to basics, which is like my signature, how do you get started in your financial journey course. Excuse me. And then we're constantly developing new ones. So that's the first one, is courses. The second one is digital downloads. So very passive. I have a resume template. I have a job interview package. I have what I call a cash calendar, which is like a way to track your money. So that's a form of revenue, is our digital downloads. The third, and actually surprisingly our biggest source of revenue in 2020, was affiliate marketing. So, I talk about high yield savings accounts all the time. I have a partnership with a business that, of course, I love and believe in, and get a little bit of a kickback by recommending them. And especially with TikTok, that was our biggest source of revenue, because not a lot of people on TikTok, I shouldn't say not a lot, but TikTok tends to skew younger. They don't have as much disposable income to invest in a course or to invest in a paid product, but I can, our business can make money from recommending a product that they like and believe in, that's free for them, and then signing up. So that was surprisingly like half of our revenue last year, which is crazy. And that, other than, making a video about it and sending people the link, that's mostly passive. A couple of other things I do, both corporate and like conference speaking events. So I'm both a keynote speaker, as well as I do more actionable workshops, whether that's in the corporate environment, or for like women's empowerment conferences, or marketing conferences. So that's one of the ways I make money. Straight influencer partnerships, me talking about a brand and collaborating with them, and getting paid either for that campaign or for that particular post. What are some of the other ones? Those I think are the big ones, the big sources of income and revenue.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, we talked briefly on it at the beginning when I pulled up your Facebook group, but do you mind just talking about what your community ecosystem looks like, and the look and feel of it? Like, are people engaging heavily on TikTok? Is Facebook really the main spot? Are the emails?
It's everywhere. It's everywhere, to be honest. I think the Facebook group is where people are much more able to have their own conversations about money, because just the platform itself that kind of lends itself to that. The number one thing that we've done in building our community is it is a non-judgmental, non-shaming community. Always, always. There's no stupid questions. There's no judgment about yourself or about other people's financial situations or financial choices. And that's something that is really, unfortunately, lacking in the personal finance industry. There's a lot of judgment. There's a lot of shame. There's a lot of, again, you are not rich because you do X. And we're really committed at her first 100K to creating platforms or communities on platforms that are non-judgmental. So we get the occasional person on Facebook who is mean to somebody who's asked, has come to the table really vulnerable, and we don't tolerate it. Same thing with TikTok is if you like comment either on my post or on somebody else's post with, a judgmental comment like that, that's not okay. That's not something that we believe in or subscribe to. So, in terms of just thinking about how we want these communities to look, that's like the number one thing is show up vulnerable. We will applaud you for your vulnerability. We will support you in your vulnerability, and we're not going to shame or judge you. And in terms of where this community is, it's a bunch of different places. TikTok, Instagram, Twitter for me is less consumer facing and more collaborating with people who do what I do or more professionals in that space. But I do have, a Twitter community. We have probably 35,000 email subscribers. So we have an email community as well. Trying to think of where else we are. I think that those are really the big ones. But Instagram and TikTok and now the Facebook group are probably the big communities where people are having conversations. And Facebook, these conversations we're doing prompts, but are largely being driven by the community members. So they're there asking questions, responding to each other's. And that's the really cool thing. I have so many women who, found me a year or two ago who maybe didn't know a lot about personal finance and are now answering questions from other people and, can pretty much word for word almost quote me in my advice. So I'm like, oh, I don't need to do this anymore. You can do this. But it's really cool to like see actively the growth that happens in people's, view on money, their relationship with money, and that they're so willing to help other community members out. It's pretty cool.
That is really cool. So just speaking on that, and then we'll sort of close out shortly after, but I'm curious what the future looks like for what you're doing. So you talked briefly about it earlier, but what's your 5-year, 10-year, however far you want to talk about, but like, I know that 5 years ago you couldn't imagine you're even here, but what is the future looking like? You talked a little bit about the Tony Robbins version, but can you elaborate a little bit on that?
I'm going to give you a cop-out answer, which is that I don't know. And I purposely don't answer this question because I am such a planner. I am such somebody who like plots out every point of my life. And if 2020 has reaffirmed anything for me is that plans are, what is it? Like, want to make God laugh, make plans, right? And what I've realized, especially early in my career, is I was very set on what I wanted to do, right? I was very set on working my way up the corporate ladder. And if I would have put blinders on, I would have lost out on every single other opportunity that didn't correspond with that plan, but could have changed my life. And so I realized very early that like plans are great, but they need to be multiple and changeable. So we don't set 5-year plans as a team. We set 1-year plans. Yeah. So we actually have 2 big projects that I can't even reveal to you, one of which we talked about before, but 2 projects that are happening right now that we're doing quietly. And we're actually calling this as a team our Beyonce year, which for us means, okay, like Beyonce just vanishes from the face of the earth for like 2 years. And then she's like, here's Lemonade, the best album ever created. Here you go. And so what we're really trying to do in 2021, we will be more public than that. We'll continue to engage on Instagram. We'll continue to do content, but we're doing a lot of behind the scenes building. 2020 was a very public year. And in 2021, we have a lot of these long-term projects that, we can tease a little bit, but we really don't want to release until they're absolutely ready. So we set like year goals as a company. I set year goals as an individual. I really try to not do anything beyond that because I don't know what it's going to look like.
I think that's smart.
My general goals, I want a TV show someday. I want to write a book. I want to start a podcast. I want to host some sort of community in-person event, both because I'm really craving that after not seeing my community for a very long time. But also I think I would love for community members to meet each other. And I think that would be really fantastic. And those are really the things, the like big aspirational things on the bucket list, is making sure that at some point in my life, my business, my career, that those things happen.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, because when I started my podcast, my only vision was just self development, and that's it.
Sure.
And then I didn't make my first dollar for a year and a half into it.
That was me. Her first 100K, which was Victory Media before, I went 2 years without really making any money. And yeah, did that so I could grow it organically, so I could make mistakes, so I could grow it and change it without me having to depend on that for income.
Yeah. Yeah. And the ways that, I see things opening up, I definitely couldn't have imagined. So, I definitely agree with that, especially in this world where just, the possibilities are endless, and you just have to see where it takes you.
Oh, and things change all the time. Again, like this time last year, COVID, we were just starting to talk about, like, we really didn't know what it looked like. And, back then we were like, oh, okay, we'll go to quarantine for like 2 weeks, a year later now, and probably still more months to come. So yeah, there's only so much you can plan for. So I just set, like, what do I want my life to look like? I want to be healthy. I want to be happy. I want to be, changing lives and changing the world, and building, a really solid, healthy plan for my own life, and whatever that happens to look like in 5 years. As long as it's doing that, I think I'm good.
Awesome. Well, knowing that the type of listeners we have a range of people just starting out to very established, people on their platform as the listeners here. But do you have any last words for the listeners for today?
Oh, that's a great question. I'm gonna give advice to my past, current, and future self, which is just to worry less. Like, I was so worried, especially when I first started building my business. Like, I wanted what I have now so badly. And I kept thinking to myself, like, okay, at what point does it happen? Right? At what point can I get there? And it felt almost like wasted time. Also, when I was going into a corporate job that I didn't want to be in, and I was like, oh God, like, I could be working on my business right now. I could be doing all these things. And I was worried so much about where I wanted to be, that I not only kind of lost sight of where I was in the present moment, but I realized that this was all part of the plan, as cheesy as that sounds. Like, I wrote a tweet the other day about, like, yeah, my side hustle, I wanted to be where I'm at right now 4 years ago. It took me building, setting bricks to build the establishment that I wanted. It wasn't going to happen overnight. And It's also very easy to see a lot of people online and think, like, oh, cool, that happened overnight. And it's like, yeah, I exploded on TikTok in about 2 seconds. Like, it was pretty crazy, but it took me 4 years to get there. It took me 4 years of establishing myself and being patient. And I was just so worried all the time. I was worried that, this thing that I was going to build wasn't going to work out, or I was worried it wasn't going to work out as quickly as I wanted it to. And I'm a very anxious person in general. And I would just tell myself, and tell any entrepreneurs, like, you're right where you're supposed to be. It's happening in the timeline it's supposed to happen. Keep pushing towards your goals, but you're right where you're supposed to be. You're learning what you need to learn. Even if you're in a bad situation, like, I learned a ton from situations that I didn't like being in. I learned what I didn't want to tolerate. I learned the environment I didn't want to be in. So I guess my advice is just worry less, enjoy the present moment more.
Well, you hear that. Worry less.
It sounds like such bullshit advice, but it's something that I have to constantly remind myself of. It's just, I worry all the time. I worry about what life is going to look like, what my business is going to look like. And it finds a way of working out, whether, through a lot of trials and tribulations, or just you continuing to move forward.
Yeah, completely agree. Well, Tori, thank you so much for the time of, sharing with us your journey, being vulnerable, and giving us so much advice. I'd like to just open the floor for you to shout out anything you want to shout out, and also to, let people know where they can maybe send a message to just say thank you if they got some value from today.
Oh, I hope so. Well, thanks for having me. You can find me at Her First 100K on all the platforms, or herfirst100k.com. That's HERFIRST100K. And yeah, come join the community. Come say hi. I would love to see you.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much. And before I let you go, I like to do this because, I'm still in my journey, But I'm curious if you have any feedback on your experience here as a guest on the podcast, like positive, constructive, like what your thoughts are. Just
You're very brave to do this publicly. Oh my goodness. No, this was great. This was a great conversation. No, I feel really good. I think that yeah, these sorts of conversations are things that I wish I had when I was first starting. So I really appreciate you having me, and I really appreciate having these conversations because, yeah, again, I've said this. I said this earlier, but I think the world of online entrepreneurship or influencer marketing is not only very veiled, but it's also it's very aspirational. And yes, there's a lot of great parts to it. There's also a lot of not so great parts to it, or there's a lot of you have to fail in order to figure it out. So I appreciate that you're having these conversations because they definitely would have been useful for me.
yeah, thanks so much. Yeah,
Well,
so if you're listening here and you're listening to these episodes, like obviously the stories and everything is really beneficial for growing your influence, but eventually you have to, take that step, take the leap to put yourself out there, or put yourself out there in a bigger or more authentic way. So if you're looking for that support system, we host a weekly meetup for influencers every Thursday. So if you're interested in that, you're more than welcome to join that. Just go to our website, whyinfluence.com, and there's a community tab. But also just go follow Tori, go send her a message, and go check out what she's doing because it's pretty amazing. And I hope I can bring you on again in the future as
I
your
would love
journey
that
evolves, because it's evolve. I mean, how much changes in a year? I'd love to have you again
so
in
much.
a year from now, just to see like where you're at.
Yeah, that would be great. I would love that. Thanks for having me.
Cool. Have a great one. Thanks so much.
You too.